So I want to bring in the three-time NBA champion Rick Fox and get his perspective on what has been absolutely a wild offseason here in the NBA. And it continues with the announcement on the Players Tribune that Gordon Hayward is going to Boston to sign with the team that you initially got drafted by. He talks about the culture, the history. Hayward's coming off the best year of his career. What is it when you first hear this, that he's going to that organization? Is this a player that takes them over the top, or is this just another piece to the puzzle?
We had that placard up there with the roster and the depth and the versatility that they've created with his addition. I mean, you saw two guys behind him, two young up-and-coming players. We watched in the Summer League this summer. Tatum only one game so far, but Brown we've seen this last year. And I got to say, I'm excited about the athleticism, the skills. Gordon has figured it out, though. He's a 7-year pro. He's been around for a while. What caught me was what you shared from the Players Tribune about that bond and that unfinished business with his coach going back to college. And I finished my last game in college in a Final Four setting and lost, couldn't go back. And if you would have told me that Dean Smith had become a coach in the NBA and he was looking to rekindle something we had unfinished from college, I carried the frustration and the pain of that loss for 9 years before I won a championship in the NBA. And it really took that championship to feel like I could put behind me something I can never go back and do again, which is play in college. So I wish him well, because I understand the pain he and Coach probably both felt falling short in college there in that Final Four game, and now they're together again in Boston, chasing hopefully at some point to get a championship together.
It's all about star power now, the super teams. Everybody's trying to chase and build and try and close the gap between them and the Warriors, and also in the East, your team and the Cavaliers. Okay, so it's Isaiah Thomas, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, and then a cast of young players who we don't yet know truly who they are. Some other veterans like Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder. But how does this team stack up? How does Isaiah Thomas and Gordon Hayward work together? What does this tell you?
Well, they got better, obviously,
right.
if possible. There is a glut of forwards, of versatile forwards, as you would say. We can go back, and this is probably not the day to bring this up, but there was a lot of talk going back into the middle of the season about whether Gordon Hayward would be coming to Boston, and he was courted quite nicely by the fan base there, inviting him to really consider it. Crowder did not take too kindly to that, but what we do know is, I'm sure, there's a lot of space for Jay Crowder, because what he does is defend the basketball and also has improved his offensive output. So the versatility of all of those players and the way the game has transpired to what we see today, where you throw 5, 6, 8 guys, 6, 7, 6, 8 guys out on the floor that can play from the perimeter, play behind the arc, shoot the 3-ball, defend, get up and down the floor, and play a physical style of basketball. If you've got 5 of those guys, size doesn't really matter. It's can you keep up with the tempo and speed with which they will play the game at. And as long as they don't beat themselves, which Brad Stevens' teams are pretty high in IQ, even though they are young, they play hard, they play smart, and they play together. Those are 3 things you want any team with, regardless of the talent on the roster, on the paper, to somehow figure out how to get to. He's gotten those guys to do that consistently now for a number of years, through really phases in their game where guys really, their egos and their desire to establish themselves individually is really at its peak. But he's gotten these young players to really put that aside and put the team first. So Gordon Hayward coming into that mix, I don't question his ability, having played for Brad Stevens, to adapt to that culture. I don't think we'll see anyone else that's been there now for a few years step outside of that culture and become individually focused on their games, as opposed to collectively focused on what they've been trying to do, as it's gotten better and better every year.
The Salt Lake City, the Salt Lake Tribune. Tony Jones had you on the phone less than an hour ago. We appreciate you getting you back here. Tough day in Utah, as they've had a lot of great players in that franchise, and Gordon Hayward is, quite frankly, one of them. He's 3rd all-time in three-pointers made, 8th all-time in points. What does this do to the franchise now to lose a player like Gordon Hayward to the Boston Celtics?
Well, it's tough. It's honestly, it's a devastating day for the Jazz. probably because, they got their hearts broke earlier today, and then the news came out and say, hey, let's slow down. He hasn't made a decision yet. And then, this is kind of represents a second heartbreak. So, for the organization, they are vowing to press on, and as David Aldridge said, they absolutely have interest in Otto Porter, but that's going to be difficult because Washington has vowed to match any offer that Porter gets. So if they don't get Otto Porter, the pickings on the free agent market are kind of slim. Mentioned Rudy Gay, but he's thought to be headed to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So there are not a lot of options for the Jazz if they don't get Porter. What they need, they would have to have Rodney Hood take a significant leap internally. He's a guy who could average 18, 19, 20 points per game if he gets more consistent and more aggressive offensively. Joe Ingles right now is probably slotted in as the starting small forward. So the Jazz have young pieces, and obviously they have Rudy Gobert, but it's going to be hard to replace 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3-4 assists, and the significant defense that Gordon Hayward presents.
Tony, 1 year ago started a whole lot of reaction from the basketball world when Kevin Durant bolted OKC for Golden State. And the new CBA was written in part to entice players, particularly in small markets, to want to stay at home because there was more money to be had. Do you believe from this point forward we're going to have some comparisons of what Gordon Hayward did today leaving Utah, just like we did with Kevin Durant a year ago?
Well, I think so. And right now it just seems like it's difficult for small market teams to keep their talent. And in this case, the new CBA and the financial incentives that incumbent teams are thought to have, it did not matter for Utah because very early in the free agent process, I think it was common knowledge that Gordon Hayward wanted to sign a 3-year deal with an option for a 4th year so that at age 30 he could qualify for the veteran supermax. So that eliminated the specter of a 5th year, which eliminated the money advantage that Utah had. And superstars are now more and more, they're opting for shorter deals. They're opting for shorter deals so they can keep pressure on their respective front offices to keep getting better, to keep moving upward. And while that's a great thing for the players, it makes it difficult for franchises to keep their talent, and it makes it really difficult for smaller franchises like the Jazz to hold on to their homegrown guys.
DA, let me interrupt you. We've got some breaking news here. Players Tribune. Gordon Hayward. After 7 years in Utah, I have decided to join the Boston Celtics.
There you go.
Gordon Hayward is headed to the Celtics. He announces it just moments ago on the Players Tribune. So, DA, let's get the reaction here. They needed to regroup. They did it. The full essay is out, and we'll get that tweeted out as well. But Gordon certainly now going to be an impact player in the East.
Yeah, look, Boston was already the top seed in the East, and this only enhances that. It only makes them stronger. Not as strong as they would be if they had Paul George as well, but certainly this makes them, a very formidable opponent to Cleveland in the Eastern Conference. I mean, Gordon Hayward is a guy that is, I think, well, at least in the East, will certainly be an all-star player going forward. I mean, he is a terrific player and helps them immensely, helps them with spacing, helps them with playmaking, helps them with rebounding, helps them at the ends of games. All of the things that he excelled at in Utah, he will excel at in Boston, and they will have another guy who can move the ball, who can shoot, who can post up. I mean, his game is very diverse, and obviously he has a great relationship with Brad Stevens, and so he's going to Boston. It's 4 years until now. 4 years, $128 million with a 4th-year player option. So those are the numbers for him, and that will allow him at the end of that 3rd year to get that 10th year deal, the super deal with the Celtics going forward. Well, he can't get the super max, but he can get a max contract from being a 10-year vet. So it's again 4 years, $128 million with a fourth-year player option for Gordon Hayward in Boston.
Well, starting to skim over some of the letter that Gordon Hayward put together, it mostly is dedicated to the fans of the Utah Jazz. He said that it's been the craziest day of his life, that he wanted to make sure he got this right. He says that he's sorry it had to work out this way for Jazz fans because of how much he loved the community. He says it's a life-changing decision for me and my family and something we took really seriously. And again, Gordon Hayward telling the nation that he is headed to Boston. And now, for the second straight year, Danny Ainge here lands a big fish in the free agent market. Last year it was Al Horford. This year it's Gordon Hayward. Now, just a couple of nights ago, DA, we were talking about how the Celtics swung and missed and didn't get Paul George. But give us the impact here on what this does, this lineup of Isaiah Thomas. You've got Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, and the young guys in Brown and Tatum, and how that impacts the Eastern Conference race.
Well, again, I think that they become a very, very legit, a much more serious opponent to Cleveland at the top of the Eastern Conference. I mean, this is a very, very talented player. One of the top, I would say, 15, 20 players in the league. When you add that, you don't have to give up anything. That makes you a very, very good a much better basketball team than you were before, and they were already good. So it gives Brad Stevens all kinds of options in terms of lineups and how he wants to play, and he can go small, and he can go big. I mean, he could put Gordon Hayward at the 2 sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of things that he could do with Gordon, and it gets them closer. And now it's Cleveland's got to come up with something, because Boston was not competitive, frankly, with Cleveland in this series. I think they're in this last Eastern Conference Finals. I think they will be that much more competitive now with Gordon Hayward going forward.
Gordon also talks about in his Player Tribune letter, which has just come out, announcing that he is going to Boston, saying that this is the toughest decision he's had to make since the one that he got together with Brad Stevens to make for him to leave Butler, go to the NBA. And he references the history, winning culture of the Celtics. Certainly did his homework in this one, talking about how much success New England sports teams have had. But then he ends the letter, and you get some chills reading this, says, referencing back to that tough decision he had to make back about 7 years ago, saying, and that unfinished business we had together back in 2010 when I left Butler for the NBA, as far as I'm concerned, all these years later, we still have it, and that's to win a championship. So clearly, DA, he's got his mind focused on what he can do in Boston.
Yeah, no question. I mean, look, he knows this guy, he knows this coach. He has obviously been steeped, whether it's recently or throughout his life in terms of what Boston got, what the Celtics have accomplished. And look, it's a great move for him. It gives him an opportunity to, again, not only be an all-star, but be on a team that has a path to the finals. They have to figure out how to beat LeBron James like everybody else, but they got one more big piece now to figure out how to do that in Gordon Hayward. So you understand it. It makes sense. I feel bad for the people in Utah because, they built a great team over 5-6 year period with him kind of growing with that squad. And it's not like they were bad. They've become a very good team. It's not like they struggled to be competitive or they struggled to win games. They got better and better every year. And this one is something that hurts. I mean, you can't lose your best player for nothing and not have it hurt. And this certainly hurts this team a great deal. And it's going to be this is the rare opportunity that we've seen recently, Jared, of, talent coming from west to east. We haven't seen much of that lately. And so this helps the Celtics a great deal. Certainly puts them and Cleveland well ahead, I think, of the rest of the pack in the Eastern Conference.